everybody. Welcome to Rock and Roll Shin-Soo Choo, episode number 76. My name is Gabe Estel. I'm here with my co-hosts, Dennis Levi Leach and Jonathan Getz. How's it going, guys?
I'm feeling the spirit of 76.
Good. Glad to be here. Glad you're here. Glad everyone else is here as well. Well, let's just dive right into it. Tonight is a special night because we're going to be inducting the third class of the Choo-Ins. The Choo-Ins. And what the Choo-Ins are is they are our version of the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Okay? So that means musicians that, while respectable, will probably never be in the actual Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Probably. And the only other criteria really was we wanted them to have more than one good record, right? I mean, that's kind of I looking at all the nominees or inductees, I should say, it seems like that's the case. So we're going to be inducting class number 3. If you haven't had a chance, you can listen to the other episodes. We were the other inductee episodes from 2015 and then 2016, tonight being the class of 2017. And we're also going to have a little bit of fun tonight with the actual nominee, the actual I keep saying nominees, the actual inductees for the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Okay, the one in Cleveland. All right. So we're going to have some fun with those as well. As everybody knows, Pearl Jam, yes. Journey, Tupac, Joan Baez, Electric Light Orchestra, just some of those are the groups that were inducted this year. So why don't we go ahead and get started, though, with a little bit of baseball news. Jonathan was lucky enough to attend a game.
Yeah, this is news, unfortunately, in my world over the last few years. I only go to maybe 1 or 2 games a year. I went with my company that I work for this past week, Royals facing the White Sox. Fortuitous enough to catch a game in that series, right? And so we're cruising up we're on a big school bus, and we're cruising up underneath. You pull into the Kauffman gates, and you kind of take this curve around, and it goes under this viaduct, right? So there's like this overpass. And
yeah, Getz was mid keg stand and he chipped a tooth. All right, anyway, go on.
I can't divulge that because I was part of a company.
Had Tina from accounting holding his legs, like drink. Anyway, go ahead.
So I come up for air, and there's a guy up near the top of the embankment. Kind of like on the concrete, like taking a photo of something in a drainage pipe, and so we're all like, kind of like yelling at him, "Hey, what are you taking a photo of?" And the guy stands up and turns around, and it's Danny Duffy, the Royals, number 1 starting pitcher, and he looks at us and he's like, "There's a giant rat in this drainage pipe." So Danny doesn't have anything to do because Danny just started today, this being Sunday, so he had a couple days off there where he didn't have any obligations, I guess, and so that's when you just like cruise.
I always kind of wondered what the pitchers did on their days off.
They just
a lot of them
the
seem to be in photography, huh? Randy Johnson, Danny Duffy,
right? Yeah. So he chatted it up a little bit and walked along back to where I don't know like where he came from or where he went back to, but. He was a long way from like the stadium. This wasn't just like right next to the clubhouse door or anything.
He threw a smoke bomb on the ground, came up, and then he was gone.
Shazam!
Well, that's fun.
Yeah, and then the White Sox kicked the Royals' ass, and that was that.
Yeah, that was a bright spot. I mean, I think the series was even. I think it was 2 games apiece, so we split the series. It was a 4-game series,
right? Yeah.
So
yeah. It's but you guys are still up there near first, so congratulations.
It is. I mean, it's kind of a little bit of a unsexy, like, because we're like 15-15. We just got swept by Baltimore this weekend. So, but hey, division might not be that good this year.
Apparently not. Yeah, unless
not so far.
Unless Cleveland really starts to make a run, and they could really pull away fast. But
oh yeah, I mean, a lot of teams just I don't think they've found their groove yet. So it's just
no. I mean, there's already a couple teams that are almost 10 games out now in baseball.
Toronto.
Like Toronto.
Yeah, the Blue Jays are off to a really rough start.
Yeah.
Levi,
lucky for you, Levi, the NL Central is pretty tight.
The Cubs have kind of been stinking it up the last couple of days. Or the Yankees have come to town and are just stomping on us. But
I hate to say it, they look pretty good this year.
They do.
Yeah, especially with Judge. I mean, shit. Yeah.
They look like they're going to be good for quite a few years if they keep all this young talent.
Yep.
Right, which is weird because I don't,
you don't associate young talent in Yankees.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, I think of high-priced free agents, but they've kind of changed the formula in recent years.
Yeah.
And then once they get some of that money off the books, they'll have cash again to spend. I mean, once Sabathia's contract's up, and anyway.
Oh yeah, they'll be in the bidding for Kershaw or Trout or
Harper.
Whatever the big free agent class is here in a couple of years.
Oh, I think definitely Bryce Harper's going to be in New York.
He already seems like a New Yorker, right?
Yeah, I mean, even though he's from Las Vegas,
shave that beard.
Yeah, right. So, interesting story about Danny Duffy. Well, guys, let's go ahead then and start with the class of 2017. Just want to give a recap. We had 6 inductees over the last 2 years. Those being Marshall Tucker Band, Grand Funk Railroad, Kevin Kinney for his work in Driving and Crying and Solo, and then also DJ Quick. So the lone hip-hop inductee so far. And then also there's J.J. Cale.
Yeah.
J.J. Cale. Yeah, J.J. Cale. So, so that's... Oh, and then, I'm sorry, Faith No More as well.
Yes.
So good classes. Nice. I'm like, man, those guys have good taste. So good work so far, guys. Running the gamut from DJ Quick to Grand Funk. So this year's class... I want to go ahead and get into that. We're each going to talk a little bit about, each of us gets one inductee. So we'll have a class of 3 tonight. So Levi, why don't you go ahead and start us off, man? Who gets the plaque on the wall, wherever that plaque is and that wall is?
The guy I have selected is a guy who was at one time called the world's greatest unknown guitar player.
Yep. And
that is Roy Buchanan. And he's a special guy with a special Telecaster. His guitar was called Nancy, and it was a 1953 Tele, I believe. And his bridge pickup, when guitar techs or he would try to get a measurement from it with a meter, it would always show 0. But the pickup worked. And so that was part of the key to his tone. And he played through a Vibrolux cranked all the way up like Hendrix would have done or something. And he was just an amazing guitar player who more people should definitely know about. He grew up in a poor small farm town outside of Bakersfield. So he was absorbing all that Buck Owens and Bakersfield sound in the 50s and stuff. And when he was 15, he left his family and with his guitar and started playing with Johnny Otis, who was kind of a rhythm and blues, early rock and roll type of guy.
Oh, yeah.
Whose son is Shuggy Otis, who's an amazing guitar player, or was in his own right.
Yeah.
He's the guy who wrote Strawberry Letter 23 for the later had a hit with the Brothers Johnson. And he ended up meeting Dale Hawkins, who was an early rock and roll R&B rockabilly guy, and he played with him for 4 or 5 years, and he met his cousin Ronnie Hawkins, who had a band called Ronnie Hawkins and the Hawks based in Canada. So he moves to Canada. Well, in that band he's playing with Robbie Robertson and Danko, and I'm not sure if Levon was in the band then or not.
He was.
Was he? Yeah, and
Well,
like Garth Hudson,
I don't know
think
if they
might have
overlapped,
been.
though.
Yeah, and so he tutored Robbie Robertson. Like, he was the main lead guitar guy, and he like tutored him, and then he ended up leaving them and ended up getting like jobs as like session and side work in the early 60s for some 60s country artists, Freddie Cannon and Merle Kilgore, who ended up being Hank Williams Jr.'s manager.
Oh, okay.
And he ended up moving to the Washington, D.C. area in the mid-60s, and like off and on like wouldn't play guitar for a long time. He was a guy who I think was haunted by a lot of demons, whether they were substance based, because he did like the booze, and like there were times where, you know, I think he would take whatever, like traveling musicians back then would take whatever pills or whatever they could find when they were on the road, and he always just had like a lonesomeness about him. You can just tell in the interviews, and then there's a documentary that was produced about him in 1971 that PBS made, a local PBS station. And it basically got him his first major record deal with Polydor.
Mm-hmm.
And he released 2 great records on Polydor. The first one's just called Roy Buchanan, and the second one is, I guess they were out of fantastic psychedelic band names. They just called it the second album, Roy Buchanan. And a funny story is, I guess in 1968, a friend gave him tickets to see Hendrix when he was in the D.C. area. And he went and saw him, and he was like totally blown away, but also like kind of disheartened, because like the things he had kind of perfected in doing with his hands and like with the tone controls, kind of making wah-wah effects just with his hands, like people in Hendrix were doing with just like electronics and pedals and effects. And so he kind of went back and just like woodshedded and just concentrated on his like country rock type playing. But he always still had like a fiery rock side to him. The guy could play jazz, blues, early rockabilly, just straight up rock and roll. He's just a fantastic guitar player. And like I said, with that special Telecaster he had, and then that Fender amp cranked, he had a special tone. Supposedly he would sometimes also do what was it Dave Davies from the Kinks would do. He would slice his speakers with a razor to kind of give them a harder, distorted sound than amps. And so, you know, on and off in the early 70s, he's like kind of hardly working. I mean, there are a few years where after those records, you know, he didn't get famous. The records didn't sell well. And then, you know, he kind of had a little bit of control creatively with those first couple of records. And once they didn't sell, they kind of stripped all that away and were just trying to make him play what they thought would make him popular. And so he got kind of disenfranchised with the whole music business. And he trained and he was a barber. Like on the side, he like cut hair.
Wow.
And yeah, and the guy, you know, some people called him better than Hendrix and stuff. Supposedly,
as a guitarist, not a barber.
Yeah. No, yeah.
We don't know how Jimmy could cut hair. All right?
Yeah. And so, you know, in the documentary, which we'll post a link to on, I'll put it in my YouTube playlist that we're all going to make for our inductees. You know, there are audio clips from Jerry Garcia, Merle Haggard talking about, you know, his playing and how great it is. And that's in 1971. And what's so crazy is in this documentary, he's so melancholy. And like one of the quotes, he's like, oh, I guess I just never got famous because I just, you know, I never cared. You know, I just wanted to play for myself or whatever. He's just so like laid back. And he talks about like growing up in that, you know, outside of Bakersfield, growing up being kind of poor and having to pick cotton and whatnot. And
yeah, it was like Grapes of Wrath shit. He was growing up around.
Yeah. It just keeps, it's, and you can just sense like the melancholy loneliness of the guy. At least I can.
Yeah.
And so,
he's an enigmatic figure. That's for sure.
Supposedly, I mean, I don't know how you would verify this. I guess you'd have to ring up Mick or Keith, but supposedly he turned down a job with the Rolling Stones.
I assume that would have been when Brian Johnson died. I would
Brian
guess.
Jones. Yeah.
Or Brian Jones,
maybe?
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
It was.
Yeah. So from like 78 to 85, he was basically a recluse. He played like live sparingly, only made one record. And then in 85, he got signed to Alligator Records, which was a major blues label in the 80s. And I believe they're still around. And they were part of the just rebirth of blues in the USA, which was huge in the 80s. And he made 3 albums for them, and they're all excellent. His last one came out in 1988, and shortly before he passed away, which is a crazy story. Like his manager and his friends say he had like kind of like chilled off the drinking, because I guess that was always one of his biggest vices, was the booze. And so he got arrested on August 14th in 1988 for public intoxication after a domestic disturbance at his residence. And so he gets taken to jail, and like at 10:26 p.m. he's in the jail cell. He's fine. Like they do the rounds at like 11:40. He's in the jail cell there, and he's killed himself, supposedly. Relatives who later saw the body say it was bruised all over. So, like, relatives and some friends to this day still dispute that fact, which just leads more to the legend of Roy.
He's mythic.
Yeah, and it's so crazy that this, you know what I mean? This is like you said, this is like Grapes of Wrath meets like a rock and roll odyssey, because he played and traveled everywhere, meets like a Quentin Tarantino movie. It's just like the guy had this crazy life, and no one hardly knows about him, and it's just a shame.
I had also read that he like sold out Radio City Music Hall,
Carnegie Hall,
like kind of, or Carnegie Hall. I'm sorry, like by like basically word of mouth.
Yeah, he didn't have any albums out. He sold it out without any albums.
Yeah, dude, and that leads, you know, that tells you how big of a fan base the guy had, just from word of mouth. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Yeah. His legend certainly preceded him.
Required listening is obviously those first 2 records, and then anything else is good still. You know what I mean? But by Roy Buchanan standards, those first 2 records are where it's at for sure.
Well, they're great. I like the second one, actually. I think the best of those 2.
Oh yeah, it's got After Hours on it, which actually After Hours, which is on that second album, was actually cut as a demo to get him signed for that first record.
Oh, okay.
It didn't end up on that album. Yeah.
So yeah, watching those clips on YouTube, and there's a lot. There's pretty good documentation of him on YouTube, and you know, you talk about that melancholy nature. I mean, he's up there on stage, and at times he just looks bored, like he's prepping dinner or something. He's like trimming his nails, and he's just ripping off these solos.
Oh yeah, and with just searing tone.
And I noticed, you know, they do like a pullback, and he has no pedals on that in that PBS doc. There are no pedals up there. It's all finger tone, and like you said, his pickups and his slash speakers cranked, and his techniques were so interesting, because he would do the shredding, but then he would also, you know, he would kind of lull you to sleep a little bit, and then he would fire away again, and then he would just do like finger tapping. Like he wouldn't even be, you know, using his strumming hand. He would just be finger tapping the whole way, and kind of like looking bored, and then like amusing himself a little bit, and gets a little bit of a grin on his face, and then he realizes he's smiling, so he stops smiling. And
he never looks like he's fully there.
Right.
No.
Right.
He looks like he's, you know what I mean? He looks like he's thinking about something else, or something, you know, I don't know. It's just
for sure.
And an interesting story, about a little backstory on that PBS documentary, not to hog our segment time here, guys, but he, at the time that it was made and he was playing around, he had a young and up-and-coming guitarist, some of you may know out there, named Danny Gatton, who is also a legend on the Telecaster.
Mm-hmm.
Well, guess what? He was being tutored by Roy Buchanan. And so, supposedly, he thought he could possibly get showed up by Danny Gatton. So, when they went to do the segment where, on the documentary, they were like, okay, we're going to film this mini documentary, and then the other half of it is going to be interspersed this live show. We're going to shoot of you, but we want you to invite one person. And so, like, everyone around thought for sure he was going to choose Danny Gatton. Well, like I said, he was a little bit, reluctant to do that because he thought he could possibly get showed up because Danny Gatton was a fantastic guitar player. And at that time, Danny Gatton was playing a lot of slide, and he was just awesome at it. Uh-huh. And so he got another Washington, D.C. local native, Nils Lofgren, to come and play. And I'll be honest, there are parts of that Nils Lofgren clip on the documentary where Roy Buchanan kind of looks like, hey, this guy's kind of like showboating a little bit, or like he's kind of like blowing me away a little bit or something. Like, but it's funny. You could, like I said, he's so hard to read.
Yeah.
On some of it, and some of it, like I said, he just seems so lonely, or something, or so disparate. But he was just such a fantastic guitar player, regardless of everything else. And I think he definitely deserves to be an inductee as a Choo-In.
Well done.
Well done, absolutely. Yeah, just a mythic figure, that guy. All right, Jonathan, go ahead, man. You could just...
Well, there's very little segue here, though. My band's debut EP came out in 1988. So...
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So my nomination for 2017.
One legend ends and another is born.
Yes. One a little less mythic and a little bit more straightforward in the band called Mudhoney.
Nice.
And I'm nominating enshrining Mudhoney, not so coincidentally, alongside the actual enshrinement of Pearl Jam, because I felt like Mudhoney they were a band kind of at the heart of the Seattle scene that, it really began in the late 80s. A few years before Nirvana and Pearl Jam hit it big. But the irony of their prominent position and longevity in the scene is that their sense of humor was always really evident and running totally contradictory to a scene primarily known for its very brooding nature. Both Kurt Cobain and Eddie Vedder were equally guilty of this brooding. But that didn't make them outcasts in any way in Seattle. They were admired by and collaborated with the heavy hitters of Nirvana and Pearl Jam and Alice in Chains, and like Mudhoney was the guy in high school that could sit with any clique at lunch and everybody would have a pretty good time. And so long as everybody at the lunch table was cool with Matt Lucan being mostly naked most of the time, but and so Mudhoney just kind of persevered through all of this. They never officially, I don't think, ever broke up really. They've since replaced one band member, the aforementioned Matt Lucan on bass, who just stopped in the early 2000s, and then they replaced him with the same bass player that they've had since, Guy Madison. And so, but anyway, back to 1988, the EP Superfuzz Big Muff, it's in Cobain's top 50 albums of all time, for what that's worth. I think we're all mentioned somewhere in Kurt Cobain's notebook. I keep hearing about all these mentions. And so it's funny because the Superfuzz Big Muff title itself has roots in guitar pedals, which we were just kind of talking about. And there are two types of guitar pedals. One, the Superfuzz is made by Univox, and the Big Muff's made by Electro-Harmonix. And so when I was at I visited Seattle several years ago, and the Experience Music Project, they had the actual Superfuzz Big Muff combo from Mudhoney. They had donated it, whatever, to be on display there. and to their collection. And so that was kind of cool to see in a really nerdy sense. But the Superfuzz Big Muff, what gave this kind of guitar sound that was very much Mudhoney, but also leaked into other bands in Seattle. So it was pretty appropriate that that it would be titled this seminal album. And so the Seattle scene starts to gain a lot of traction. Cameron Crowe makes singles, and they create the single soundtrack, which sold millions of records.
Yeah. And
so Mudhoney was given $20,000 to record a song for the soundtrack. They spent $164 of it by recording it at a dude's house. A song called Overblown. That's all about how the scene is overblown. So Mark Arm, the lead singer, Steve Turner, the guitarist, Dan Peters, the drummer. Anyway, Mark Arm he's a pretty funny dude when it comes to his songs. Nobody has more punchlines in their songs this side of like Weird Al.
Yeah,
right.
And Mark Arm really likes to call bullshit when he sees it, and even when it's within his own city, whether it be Overblown, songs like Generation Spokesmodel, Into Your Shtick. Into Your Shtick is an amazing song when it comes to calling people out on bullshit, and it's pretty brutal at the same time. No band, even Pearl Jam writes more political songs than Mudhoney. Songs like Fearless Doctor Killers, Hard On for War, I Saw the Light, pretty intense and scathing songs about that unfortunately are very still prominent today. So while they had this Superfuzz Big Muff sound, right, it was still very retro and timeless, and from like surf rock to the Stooges, and so much to the Stooges that at one point, they've done like Stooges sets. Mark Arm's been a stand-in vocalist.
Nice.
And so they've had this pretty steady sound and production throughout. They've had about 10 albums, but at the same time, they've later incorporated horns, which sounded interesting. I remember the first time I heard it, I was like, "Holy shit! There's horns on this Mudhoney album. It's so strange."
Right.
And so they've evolved a little bit, and I've been fortunate enough to catch them a couple times. One time in Kansas City a couple years ago, we were on this. I literally stood to the side of the stage with I could have touched the Superfuzz Big Muff of Stevie Turner's, and it was pretty cool. I mean, they were all just sitting at the bar before the show, and I had him say hello to Michael Davis. I had Stevie Turner say hello to Michael Davis, who was on episode 75, and on my phone, I had him say hi. And so they're pretty cool guys, and they're super accessible dudes. Like probably some of the most accessible dudes, it seems like, from the whole Seattle scene. In that, you see what these Mark Arm actually works for Sub Pop Records. So Mudhoney was kind of the first big band for Sub Pop, relatively speaking, like first band for Sub Pop. And Mark Arm actually works in the warehouse for Sub Pop Records, or did at one point. There's video of him. There's a documentary on Mudhoney. He fulfills orders. He'll go grab, somebody orders Superfuzz Big Muff on the internet, and he'll put it in the, in the box to be fulfilled. Guy Madison, the second bass player that replaced Matt Lukin, he was also works as a registered nurse, and I guess at a show in Switzerland several years ago, a thing happened that you thought only happens in the movies, and that's when a stage diver jumps off the stage and the seas part.
Yeah.
And he just lands on the floor. Yeah. That happened. And so they stopped the show, and Guy Madison goes down there and checks him out because the dude's kind of messed up. And in the meantime, they call an ambulance, and so the bass player of Mudhoney is tending to this fallen stage diver in the middle of a show. And so just to see these guys, because a lot of musicians do have to work other jobs, but
Sure.
Pride probably hides a lot of that, or they just
Sure.
they don't bother showing it. But these dudes, they don't care, you know.
Yeah.
And so I think that's a pretty cool aspect about them. Also, points of note: 2013 they played the Space Needle for Sub Pop's 25th anniversary. They played. There's awesome. It's a 25-minute set that's on YouTube. They're on top of the Space Needle.
Wow.
And with a little crowd there. Pretty cool. And and then lastly, since I'm a big graphic guy, Ed Fotheringham's artwork for My Brother the Cow, Every Good Boy Deserves Fudge, I think is great. He does awesome illustrations. I hope to someday have him on the show even. But all that being said, I would say Tomorrow Hit Today is probably my favorite Mudhoney records from 1998. There are some killer, Stevie Turner writes some killer songs. Ghost on there. It's got such a hook to it, but at the same time, yeah, it's all its own. And the one and only Mudhoney, class of 2017.
Nice.
Cool. Good choice. Yeah, I feel like well, also you forgot to mention that they're in Black Sheep as well.
This
Right?
is true.
Yeah.
Yes.
But I feel like they they never got as big, obviously, as the other bands from Seattle, and I think a lot of people that listen to those bands probably couldn't name one Mudhoney song, unfortunately, and that's a travesty.
It is.
Because they deserve it. They rip. I saw them. I saw them probably about 2006. I think I saw them. Then I saw them at Riot Fest one year too, and they definitely still deliver. They got a lot of punch still. So
They do, yeah, and their shows are intense.
Yeah.
That was kind of the Kansas City show and the show I saw in Chicago with Michael Davis, I don't know, like 10 years ago. Both of those had mosh pits, and they're legit mosh pits. And I was glad that I was to the side of it. I think Davis jumped in one, and I was like, I'm staying away.
I think there was a little bit of one at when I saw him. I saw him at the Double Door back in 2006.
Okay.
I think. Yeah, which was a great show. Really, really good band called the Cynics from Pittsburgh opened up for him too. So anyway, so my inductee, and thanks for sharing yours, guys. Great choices. The one that you mentioned critical acclaim for both of your inductees. Mudhoney, among other Seattle musicians, as well as, I think their first record was on that 1001 albums to buy before you die or something like that. Yeah. And then Roy Buchanan, like Levi had mentioned, was certainly maybe not famous among music fans, but famous among musicians. My band that I'm inducting probably has never really, I think, gotten the respect that they deserve. I'm not saying they're, Led Zeppelin or anything. But a few writers recognize Tesla as more than a hair band, where I think that label, unfortunately, and maybe not totally unfairly on a few songs, that's where they're lumped. But Tesla never went overboard on Aquanet or Spandex like some of the other bands of the late 80s. Or Makeup. Yeah. No, they weren't Stryper or Poison by any means. And unfortunately, I think in a lot of people's eyes, like when you say Tesla, they think, oh yeah, Rat, Poison. And I like Rat and Poison too. But I think Tesla always had a lot more layers to their music than a lot of their quote-unquote contemporaries. Their tunes are bluesier, I think. And I also think really the strong dueling lead guitars really set them apart in Frank Hannon and Tommy Scotch. Now, Tommy's not with them anymore. But they've got a guy named Dave Arude, which is a badass name. He's been playing.
Son of Rick, I believe, just getting us in.
He's ravishing. But anyway, So yeah, also I think to their credit as well, a lot like Mudhoney, they've kept most of the original lineup intact. That Tommy Scotch, he's it's pretty well publicized that he's had his struggles with substance abuse and what have you. He's doing okay now, but he I think like 2004 or so, 2006, something like that, was when Dave Rude joined the band. So, you still go see Tesla now, and it's 4 of the 5 original members, and they still sound great live. Yeah. And Tesla deserves better. I think that the Tesla soup kind of sounds to me sort of like you take a heaping helping of Aerosmith, put in like maybe even a little spoonful of the Allman Brothers, a full cup of the Scorpions, and then add another full cup of like all the best parts of Def Leppard, right? And then maybe even mix in like a little bit of UFO and Led Zeppelin as well. And to me, that's Tesla. That's not Poison or I think all those influences that I just mentioned are really prominently displayed on these 2 records that they did called A Reel to Reel, which are all covers. And the covers don't stray too much from the originals, but they're both really fun records. So I suggest checking them out. And as far as Tesla's studio output, they've gone through a couple hiatuses. So despite the fact that their first record came out in 1986, they only have 7 studio albums, which to me, like for a band that's been together for over 30 years now, that's not a lot. And a lot of that has to do with, they've taken some long breaks, including, I think, kind of breaking up in 96, and they didn't get back together until late 2000. And then they've been together pretty much ever since. They have 2 great records, I think, that really stand out, particularly for, albums coming out in 1986 and 1988. Mechanical Resonance and then The Great Radio Controversy are both great records, I think. And then the Psychotic Supper, which came out like, after 5-Man Acoustical Jam really broke through. That's a pretty good record too. 1991, I think, is Psychotic Supper. I think.
90.
No, you're right on 5-Man Acoustic Jam. Yeah. With Tesla, one thing I wanted to mention is 5-Man Acoustical Jam. That's how a lot of people, were introduced to Tesla.
For sure.
Signs was huge. Their famous cover of from 5-Man Acoustic Band, 5-Man Electric Band. I'm sorry. Yeah. From their just a semi-popular song from like 1970, something like that. And they just took it, and that blew up, man. I mean, Signs was huge. I mean, I remember just constant rotation on MTV and on the radio. And it's kind of a perfect cover, man. It really is. And I think covers are important because they had really choice taste in covers. They take Signs, and then also you go back to their first record in 86. They take a new wave song, Little Susie, by a band called PhD, which was like a British new wave band. Mm-hmm. And they just totally make it just a driving, but like also really warm acoustic, hard rock song.
Don't bring her down, man.
Yeah, she's a lot like you. It's one of my favorite songs. I mean, I think it's one of the best. Yeah. I think it's one of the best covers ever. I mean, and I think, they really took that song and made it their own. And it's not to say like they're not over the top at times on on those couple records. It's unfortunate, and I've already alluded to it a little bit. When people mention Tesla, a lot of times they say, well, good for the time, right? They'll say like, oh, they're better than all those Aquanet bands, and that's probably true. But I just wish that we didn't always have to couch Tesla in that, we didn't always have to bring up those other bands when we talk about them, because they've got a lot more in common with 70s Aerosmith than they do with the Bullet Boys.
For sure. And it's, it's Jeff Keith, right?
Yeah.
His voice definitely lent like a Blue-Eyed Soul aspect almost to some of their songs. The way he could, the emotion in his voice.
Oh, yeah.
And that, that was missing in a lot of those bands that they get couched with.
That his raspy voice, as well as, just I really think blues-driven guitar. I think Frank Hannon's a really underrated guitarist.
Oh, yeah.
And Keith also, has that kind of, he's got the good frontman vibes, I mean, it's like some Steven Tyler, kind of like a little bit of Shake Your Moneymaker era Chris Robinson, a little bit of even like, Faces era Rod Stewart. I mean, he had a little bit of that, and he still sounds great. I mean, his rasp is well preserved, if that makes any sense.
For sure.
Do you think he possibly influenced Chris Robinson with stage presence? It feels
possible.
like it.
I think so. Yeah, particularly like Shake Your Moneymaker.
Yeah,
definitely.
Yeah.
I think so. Yeah, they're both like wiry, tall, kind of. I always thought that like Tesla sounded like, and this is going to sound like a knock, but it's not. I thought it always sounded like the Crows if the Crows didn't evolve.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Check out We're No Good Together, one of my favorite tracks on Mechanical Resonance. It's just got so much more layers than I think they're given credit for. Their music does. And finally, I talked about Five Man Acoustical Jam, that their live album from 1990, which has got great covers on it. Signs, as I mentioned. They do a pitch perfect version of We Can Work It Out.
For
which
sure.
I mean, the harmonies are just phenomenal on that version of that song. Good backing vocals too. Brian Wheat, who's the bass player, he always contributes to the backing vocals as well. So they had 4 strong voices really propelling that acoustic live album. And also, I think that album, even though there had been a couple episodes of MTV Unplugged recorded, I think that album indirectly, maybe even directly, is responsible for making MTV Unplugged
There
popular.
was a first season in like 89, but it wasn't that popular.
No, it had,
and for sure that album hit the airwaves, and they played the crap out of that song.
Yeah,
and it got people to kind of just be into that.
People started to appreciate acoustic music more. They wanted to hear hard rock bands play acoustic.
Yeah, Clapton Unplugged came out, and that was huge after that.
And Tesla did an Unplugged as well after that record broke, which is really good too, by the way. They're Unplugged. It's like half of an episode. Like, I don't know if you guys remember, it used to be 2 bands featured on Unplugged, unless it was like a special occasion, like Nirvana or something like that. But yeah, so I've got a lot of affection for these guys. I think they're kind of perpetual underdogs, they're just a really good, it's kind of a cliche, but no frills rock and roll band. And Sacramento's finest deserves to be a Choo-In.
Yeah, so, there you go.
Well done.
Tesla gets it for me.
It's not what you got, it's what you give.
You know it. So, yep, absolutely. So yeah, good stuff.
Yeah,
always like hearing them.
Yeah.
Nice. Now for the other half of the episode.
Yeah, let's have some fun with this, guys. I threw this together just kind of yesterday, but I thought it would be fun. As I mentioned earlier, 2017, really good class of Rock and Roll Hall of Fame this year. Yes, Pearl Jam, Journey, Joan Baez, Electric Light Orchestra, Journey, Joan Baez. Yeah. Okay, sorry. So what I've done is I took the names of all the inductees. So, Yes, even though Yes has had like 57 members, they only inducted 8 people, just 8. It was the union lineup, essentially. So we've got a lot of Yes in our pool of applicants here. But what I did was I took it as, vocals, guitar, drums, bass, keys, and Roy Wood, essentially, since Roy Wood was inducted with Electric Light Orchestra. And the rules are, I kind of wanted to make this, a little more challenging, guys. So what I'm pitching as the rules are, you got to have a vocalist, a bassist, a drummer, at least one guitarist, and your fifth member can be either a second guitarist, keyboards, or Roy Wood. Okay.
So you have to fill out your positions.
You got to fill out your positions. You got 5 slots. All right. 5 slots to fill. So you can do 2 guitarists if you want to, or you can do a guitarist and keys, because there's some great keyboardists, fortunately, in this class. Unfortunately, Boom from Pearl Jam did not get inducted, so I did not include Boom in the list. And then also, I included Chris Squire, even though he's deceased. Obviously, he's one of rock's greatest bassists, so I just couldn't leave him out. And we were Tupac as well. Yeah. I mentioned Tupac as well. I'm sorry. There's some conspiracies around that, but anyway.
Right.
Yeah. And I forgot to mention Tupac as well. So yeah, you could take Tupac as a vocalist and certainly make things interesting there. So yeah, Tupac as well. So Tupac and Squire are both in the list. So I put our names in a randomizer, I swear, and I came up first. All right, I promise.
Are we snaking?
We could. Yeah, you want to do it that way?
Yeah,
let's do it that way.
Yeah.
Let's do it that way. Okay. All right. So that leaves me. I go with I got the first choice, and we're gonna do the snake here. All right, guys. You guys might not. Here's why this guy's my first choice. I think some versatility, because I actually want these people to sound good together, and I think a lot of people could work with this guy. So I'm taking Jeff Lynne as my first choice.
Damn it.
Okay.
Tear up my draft board, bud.
Crystal takes Lynne first.
I had him all the way to the Final Four.
Oh. All right, so.
Son of a gun, man. I had centered everything around it. Obviously, as you do with one of the best songwriters of his generation. And
he was actually my second. He was my second guitar player. But.
You were going to relegate him to your second. You don't deserve to have him. All right then. So that
yeah. Go ahead.
That definitely shakes it out. Because I didn't want to go cliche and go Eddie, right? So
do it.
No, I'll
go. Your world.
I'll go John Anderson.
Okay.
Nice.
All right.
It can happen to you.
Nice.
Okay. So now I get 2 picks, right?
You do.
Is that what we're doing?
You do. Yeah.
This is monumental. Okay. I think I got to go Nile Rodgers first.
Oh yes, was he on here?
Oh right, he was.
So.
I forgot to put him on there.
Oh, did you guys not mention him? He's on there.
You're right though. You're right though.
Yeah,
Nile Rodgers is in, man.
You're gonna put him at guitar. Thank you, Jesus Christ. I'm embarrassed. I forgot to. Good choice too, because that guy can play with anybody. Mm-hmm. So.
And then for drums, I mean, I didn't fact check this, but is Bill Bruford on the list?
Yep. Yeah, he made it.
I think Nile and Bruford. There you go. Right. There's my first 2.
Yeah, Bill Bruford and Alan White both made it. They took Yes's Union lineup. Yeah. Yeah. So, anyway, all right. So back to Getz. All right.
So I'm gonna go to. Man, that really screws up everything, doesn't it? I'm gonna go to bass, and I'm gonna pick up Jeff Ament.
All right.
Bass.
Good choice.
He was
John
my
Anderson, Jeff Ament.
He was my bass player. Now I gotta pick a new one.
The bassists are limited. All right, on this list, it's not a bass heavy list. Although we have some great players. Whoops. All right. Or back to me now? Is it me? Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Okay, so I've got Jeff Lynne. Well, you know what? Since bass is going to be hard to come by, I got to take Squire, obviously.
Right?
Yeah.
That's what I was just thinking. I was like, man, if he doesn't pick Squire,
I gotta have him. Yeah. So yeah, I go with the fish. I go with Squire. Let's do it.
All right, you get another pick too.
Oh, I do. Yes. All right, now I'm really thinking about how this band will sound. Okay. This is. I'm going to go actually now with. I'm going to go with Greg Raleigh. All right. Yeah. You know what? The roots of Journey, Santana.
for sure.
That's the root of Journey.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
Obviously it sounded different, but Raleigh's on the. He was there until like about 81 or so when Jonathan Cain came on board, and they've still got him. But yeah, I'm not.
All my favorite Journey songs are Raleigh era songs.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Absolutely.
So yeah, I'm going with Raleigh. Let's do it.
Nice. Good call.
All right, I'm gonna add some keys up in this joint, and I'm gonna get that ELO sound after all. I'm going Richard Tandy on keyboards.
Nice. Good choice. God, ELO has so many great tunes.
Oh my gosh.
I mean, like, it's one of those things I forget how many great tunes they have, and unless I like sit down and look at them, you're like, oh shit, wow.
Okay.
These guys are so good.
He's such an underrated songwriter, Jeff
Yeah.
Lynne. Obviously,
Sure.
I mean, he's been enshrined to the Hall of Fame. How underrated can he be? But
I think for my next pick, I'm going to go keys as well. I'm going to pick Wakeman while he's still on the board.
All right. Obviously he's he's the most over the top of any of these keyboardists, and like I love the guy. I do. It's just he's gonna be a big part of the band. You know what I mean? Like,
I've got something cooking here.
All right.
I'm gonna pick a song that these guys are gonna do.
Okay.
When we're all
right.
done.
All right.
Okay.
So,
do I pick twice again?
yeah,
Or no?
you get
How
to go
does this
again.
work?
yeah.
Okay.
All right.
Okay. Vocals Tupac.
Nice. I like it.
Wow.
All right.
So I'm gonna. I need a drummer, so I got John Anderson, Jeff Ament, Richard Tandy on keys. I'm gonna go Ainsley Dunbar on drums.
Good choice.
Yeah, pretty versatile
Solid.
dude.
Solid. Yes.
Hey, he played with Jefferson Starship for a while too.
Zappa.
Yeah, he played with Zappa.
Mills,
Yeah.
UFO. Bowie.
Yep.
Yeah.
Good choice. All right. All right. Okay, so what do I got here? I've got a bassist. I've got Chris Squire. I've got Jeff Lynne. Oh, shit, I need a guitarist. Yeah, and I've got Greg Raleigh. Okay, so I've got 2 picks left, right? Yeah.
Yeah, I've got 1 pick left.
Oh, okay.
So how many members do you have?
I currently have 4 members, so
Okay,
I'm
me too.
going to be picking my
Okay.
5th.
Okay.
All right. God. Shit, this is tough. This is really tough now. I've got to take a guitarist, obviously.
Right?
God, they're all so good, too. I'm going to go... God, this is not a Pearl Jam heavy night for me. Because I'm thinking about integration here. I'm going to go with Hal. I've got to go with Hal. He hasn't been taken yet, right?
Right.
No.
Okay.
Nope.
All right.
It's a good-looking band.
Yep.
Okay. Jonathan.
Gabe, you get one more to round it out.
Oh,
to
yeah.
Oh, I
finish
thought
the
he
band
already...
here.
Oh, sorry. I thought he had 5.
Yeah.
Sorry.
So I've got Jeff Lynne on vocals, maybe strumming a little acoustic too. Steve Howe. I need a drummer. Yeah, I need a drummer. Oh, I'm going to go with Alan White. Yeah. Alan White played on Plastic Ono Band. Did you guys know that?
No.
Yeah, he did.
Nice.
Roy Buchanan was invited to play on Plastic Ono Band, but he passed out on Ludes on the control table. Didn't work.
Supposedly he was going to work with McCartney as well, and like kind of blew it all off.
Man.
All right.
Said he was always just playing for himself.
Yeah.
My band is complete.
Nice.
Okay.
I call them Mesh. All right.
Mesh. All right. I will round out my band. I need a guitarist as well, and in the interest of keeping it all mixed and not having two members of the same band, I guess I'll go.
I ended up to
Neil Schon.
Okay. Nice.
Oh yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
There you go.
Cool. I like
Okay.
it, guys.
My last pick, and I guess, I'm not going to say I'm forced to take Ross Valerie, but I'm forced to take Ross Valerie. So, Ross Valerie
Sometimes
it is,
in life, we got to just select
right?
Ross.
He's,
Right.
it's like if Hulk Hogan never took steroids. But,
All right. So let's review these then.
yeah, my band is Tupac, Ross Valerie, Bill Bruford, Nile Rodgers, and Rick Wakeman, and they're going to do Sly and the Family Stone's Music Lover.
Nice.
All right.
I like
Right. Wow.
Yeah.
I like it. All right, so my band is John Anderson, Jeff Ament, Richard Tandy, Ainsley Dunbar, and Neil Schon. They are going to perform All the Young Dudes.
Nice, good one. That's a good one.
Outstanding choice.
Yeah.
I am going to pick. Well, I've got Jeff Lynne as my vocalist. Steve Howe on drums. I've got Alan White on bass. I've got Chris Squire. So I've got a lot of yes. And then on keys, I've got Greg Raleigh. The song we're going to do is ELO's Overture 10538.
Dude, it's one of my favorite songs of theirs, and I can never remember the number. I'm always like, 132, like OU812. Which one is it?
It kind of got resurrected a few years ago on the American Hustle soundtrack. It's
on that first record, and I looked out like 5 years ago and found like a mint copy of it in a free box of records that someone was throwing away.
Of course you did.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, so good stuff, man. I like it, guys.
That's fun.
Nice work.
That's fun.
Nice work.
Yeah.
Alrighty. Well, it was a lot of fun. You know what? Hey, if you want to build a band at home, let us know who you'd pick. All right. You can tell us at rockchew.com, on Facebook. Tweet at us at rockinchew. That's rock as in as in
Owner of a Lonely Heart.
Yeah, in there somewhere.
Nile Rodgers, maybe.
Nile Rodgers.
Nile.
There we go. Nile Rodgers, who I'm embarrassed to say I forgot.
Twice now.
I know, such a talented guy. Yeah, right, huh? No kidding. Niall, we're cool, I promise. So anyway, yeah, check us out.
Please direct all hate mail to Gabe.
Right. Please follow us on Twitter and Instagram at rockinchew. Also, you can find all of our episodes at rockchew.com. And we look forward to seeing everybody for episode number 77. Thanks again, and have a great night.
Catch the spirit.